battle the occupying Mongol forces in feudal Japan in the new masterpiece from Sucker Punch. I bring before you Ghost of Tsushima. It's been 6 years since infamous Second Son / First Light, and Sucker Punch have once again reinvented themselves by bringing players a completely different experience than in their previous efforts. It's going to be tough, but this review will steer clear of spoilers completely, but I will offer that this is an incredibly deep and engrossing story from beginning to end, and it's only made better by 2 fantastically acted voice tracks both in English and in Japanese, and visuals that you wouldn't expect that the PS4 could even produce, accented by a movie-quality score. Ghost of Tsushima is the most theatrical game that I've played in quite a while, but you don't need to be a film buff to get fully immersed in this epic journey of dignity, defiance, and honor. Here's all of what I'll tell you about the story, and it won't be much. The reason being that the story is fantastically written, with some wonderful twists and turns along the way. Time is never wasted, with a wonderfully balanced timeline throughout, even with some true surprises that arise. You play as Jin, nephew of the leader of your province, and he answers to the shogun of Japan. After being invaded by the Mongol army, you set out to do whatever you can to push the invaders back into the open sea, and along the way, build your legend through word and action as the Ghost, an avenging fighter who isn't afraid of the Mongols. Through actions such as invading enemy camps, ambushing roving patrols, and freeing captured residents of the area, your legend slowly begins to grow with not only your people, but also within the ranks of the occupying forces. Enemies will begin to cry out, "It's the Ghost!" And some will even cower in fear after you've cut down one of their own. Gameplay-wise, it'll feel somewhat familiar if you've played games like The Witcher 3, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and/or Horizon Zero Dawn. But that's not a bad thing at all, since that familiarity to 3 highly popular games only helps you to ease into the game even quicker from the start. Parries are hugely important for success later on in the adventure, and luckily, once you get the timing down, you should be pretty successful. You'll have both light and heavy melee attacks at your disposal from the start, and as you proceed along your path, you'll also earn distance attacks from the likes of arrows, sticky bombs, which are great for fighting off ancillary enemies in large battles, smoke bombs for cleverly deceiving potential attackers, and much more as things progress. Added to all of these options, you'll also have specific stances to choose from, some being much more effective against certain types of enemy. Once learned, you can switch between stances by holding R2 and choosing a face button on the controller. All of these attributes and techniques can be upgraded when you've accumulated sufficient points, and the choices are pretty broad. All of this combined allows you to shape Jin into the fighter that best suits your personal style, and for me, made things much more approachable based on my preferred way to play a game like this. From an audio perspective, Sucker Punch has exceeded any expectation that I may have. Included are 2 full voice presentations in both English with Japanese subtitles and a fully English option as well. Being someone that, surprising to some, loves movies much more than video games, I jumped right into the Japanese voice track with English subtitles. That did present a bit of an issue though, purely from a personal perspective. Unlike using subtitles in a movie, which is completely non-interactive, looking down to read the subtitles in the middle of a playable scene proved to be a bit distracting, causing me even to run my horse off a cliff at one point. From a technical standpoint, there's nothing wrong with using subtitles whatsoever, but when enemies are attacking you while you're looking at the bottom of the screen so you don't miss any dialogue, well, it can be a bit problematic. Luckily, the English voice actors are equally superb. Things can really get interesting for someone who, like me, loves film, and specifically the films of acclaimed director Akira Kurosawa. He had a signature style in his movies, and he has been a model for other successful filmmakers such as Ingmar Bergman, Federico Fellini, Roman Polanski, Stanley Kubrick, and even George Lucas. just take a look at the Star Wars trilogy and you'll see a lot of inspiration from Kurosawa. This game is drenched with the influences of Kurosawa, so deeply in fact that the game's options, you can even choose a Kurosawa mode, which is more than just a fancy way to say black and white mode. Wind blows stronger, whites are whiter, and blacks are blacker, and it almost feels like a slight sepia tone was added. And even the audio sounds like you're watching in a cinema in the 50s. Past that specific mode though, the different camera angles used throughout the entire game, not just in the cutscenes, are right out of Kurosawa's book. When riding your horse through fields of long grass that sway in the wind, you get lost in that moment, feeling almost as if you're in Yojimbo itself. The best part is that you don't need to have any prior knowledge of Kurosawa's work, but this influence adds so much to the overall experience, and I'm sure that my mouth was agape on more than one occasion. This is all grounded in reality too, so you won't see any giant enemy crabs or special powers allowing you to shoot lightning bolts from your fingers. The combat feels truly real at times, with natural movements being a constant. On top of that, more familiarity will set in with abilities right out of Uncharted and even Horizon Zero Dawn, albeit subtle. On the downside for me though, were the moments where I felt truly overwhelmed. You need to use your brain a bit on occasion, especially when you're thrust into a large-scale battle. You can't just blindly run into the fray with your sword wildly flailing. Instead, you need to approach enemies with some thought put toward which stance to use, or what the expected weak point might be. Also, there are moments when you'll need to don your sneaking cap, and even though stealthy gameplay has never been a favorite of mine, I was still able to get through those sections. I may just have failed a few times though. At the end of the day, Ghost of Tsushima is one of the finest games that I've ever played through. It took a good amount of time to complete the campaign, and I still have a breadth of side mission content to go back and finish. It's the closest I've ever experienced when it comes to interactive theater, and my love for what I was doing never wavered. It's absolutely gorgeous, intuitive, thought-provoking, and has a story that's incredibly engaging. The butter on the gravy is definitely the Kurosawa influence upon the core of the game, and it's something that I truly cherish and want more of. My score is a 10 out of 10.